This is the New South Wales Country Hour on ABC Radio New South Wales.
G'day and welcome to the Country Hour. Lara Webster with you, and we've got plenty to get through this midday. In the next hour, we'll take a look at a port dispute disrupting trade. I'll also bring you more information on the unfolding COVID situation and its impact on agriculture. And while many community members are relieved controversial poison bromadiolone was rejected to fight the mouse plague, not everyone is welcoming the decision.
Nobody wants to see that sort of thing where it's introduced and possibly go into the food chain for animals, for humans. Nobody wants to see that. But nobody has come up with a better idea.
More on that story soon. If you've got any thoughts to share on bromadiolone or anything else we might talk about this next hour, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can send me a text on 0467 922 684. First today, though, a union dispute with Patrick Stevedore Company has resulted in more than a quarter of the rail freight windows at Port Botany being closed. The Freight and Trade Alliance, which represents importers and exporters, says it will have a devastating impact on the New South Wales economy. The long-running dispute is reportedly over pay and conditions, and Patrick is the last of three major stevedoring companies to reach an agreement with workers. Paul Zelli is the Director of Freight and Trade Alliance, and he told me a short time ago that he would like the dispute to go to the Fair Work Commission.
Very difficult situation at the moment. So as a part of the protected industrial action, which was going to limit some of the rail interface work at Port Botany, at the Patrick's operations, Patrick have taken an extreme measure to cancel many of the windows, claiming that the protective industrial action is just making it unsustainable for them to operate. So that's having a massive impact on our exporters, who are already facing, massive increases in shipping line freight rates, and just difficulty getting any capacity on vessels at all, just with a huge global demand. Now they don't have the rail as a facility to give them access to the port itself. So that's going to result in the rail stopping short of the port. There's a couple of destinations within the port precinct, being DP World Logistics and another one at Cooks River. And another option, again, is out at Enfield. So the rail from the regional areas is going to have to terminate into the Sydney Metropolitan. Then we're going to have secondary road movements to actually take those containers to the port itself.
What's the impact then here, dollar-wise?
Difficult to actually quantify, but we've done the next 3 weeks alone, we're estimating in direct costs it'd be somewhere in the vicinity of $2 to $3 million in those extra costs to actually stage the containers, so actually to load and unload them at these intermodal facilities, temporary storage, and then road movement. And then rubbing salt into the wounds as well, Patrick's also charge a fee for large vehicles accessing the terminal of $50 per vehicle. So not the choice of the regional exporters to use road, but this is going to be another consequence of them not servicing rail, that they have to pay this fee as well for vehicle entry.
Look, as you mentioned before, there's a lot of history here, but what is the solution? What do you see that it is?
I think we need the matter to actually, I think, go to the Fair Work Commission and actually be heard by an independent arbitrator. The parties don't seem to be able to get to a solution. It's just been going on way too long. Late last year, the matter was going to be heard before the Fair Work Commission, and then at the 11th hour, the parties agreed to settle out of court, and it's just flared up again. So I think our feeling is that it needs to go to the Fair Work Commission on the basis of the economic impacts that it's going to have on the broader economy, and we need resolution there from the regulator. And
have you again brought that request to the Fair Work Commission?
Not direct to the Commission. We've approached the Attorney General's Department, and we'll be doing some formal engagement with the Attorney General, and also now with Barnaby Joyce coming on board as the not just the Deputy Prime Minister, but also the Minister for Infrastructure. we'll be making approaches there to see if we can get some level of intervention.
Now, I imagine it's not just current product that is a concern, a future product is too. What are your concerns about the next harvest?
Yeah, I think exporters are going to have to factor in a couple of things, and something that's going to be with us for a while is increased costs and increased delays. So it's hard enough at the moment, with some of the geopolitical tensions around the place. I know our cotton shippers, for example, have had to source new markets as China's really not an option for them now. So to do so, they've been successful, but they've been doing it with reduced margins. And then you throw on top of that the increase, as I mentioned before, increased freight rates and now these extra logistics costs. It's just going to diminish any margin that's left, and it's just going to make it extremely difficult for our exporters and then pass down to farmers and rural communities to be viable.
Paul Zelli from the Freight and Trade Alliance. The Maritime Union of Australia said in a statement that the dispute has been going for 18 months, while agreements with DP World and Hutchison Ports have been reached. The union action today involves 1-hour stoppage bans and not the row lengths, but Patrick is attempting to escalate the dispute, according to MUA. Well, let's head to more news of the day now, and we'll go to the Upper Hunter region. And last night, the Upper Hunter Shire Council voted on 2 significant energy projects in the region. One decision was in relation to a wind farm proposal, and another regarding a planned gas pipeline. Our Upper Hunter reporter, Bridget Murphy, joins me now. Afternoon, Bridget.
Good afternoon, Lara.
First, to the wind farm. What is the Hills of Gold project?
Yeah, so as you said, Lara, it's one of these large-scale projects, and it is a wind farm that's slated to be located approximately 5 kilometres south of Hanging Rock near Nundle, and it kind of sort of goes between the Upper Hunter region and into the New England there. So it's quite a significant site. A couple of hundred turbines are planned for that area, and it's slated to be a kind of a start for renewable energy projects in the Upper Hunter region. As we know, we're a very coal-heavy region, so this has been planned by a development group to bring renewables into the region.
So what then did Council vote on last night in relation to it?
Yeah, so this was a vote whether or not to enter into a voluntary planning agreement. Now, Council did vote to accept an offer from the Hills of Gold Wind Farm Proprietary Limited to enter into that planning agreement. So basically what that will do is it will provide contributions to community projects from that company into the impacted areas. So the agreement, according to Council, is based on an annual contribution of $3,000 per turbine towards a community enhancement fund and a fixed contribution of $5,000 per annum to cover admin costs and other things. So the project involves the construction, the operation and the eventual decommissioning of the wind farm with 70 to 100 turbine generators and all of the associated equipment which comes to that. So, if you're looking at $3,000 for each turbine and then that $5,000 payment as well on top of that, it's quite a significant injection into places like Nundle and Timor here in the Upper Hunter, because this wind farm is going kind of on the top of the Great Dividing Range through that region. So a number of really little communities that will be impacted by that project.
As we know, these projects do always come with some controversy. What are folks near the proposed site saying about it?
Yeah, so I had a yarn this morning with Chris Eagles. He's a resident in Timor, so that's on the Upper Hunter side of the project. He owns quite a large farm there, and he thinks basically if this project comes in, it will be like having skyscrapers on his boundary fence. So he argues, it'll be noisy. It could impact the water table on his property and access to some of that water. And he's also frustrated that council haven't consulted with the community. He says that they haven't even been out to the area. Let's take a listen.
I guess it's disappointing that they have entered into this agreement because in doing so, whilst it's not an explicit approval of the project, it is an implicit approval in that they are negotiating with the proponent as if this project had been approved. We really would like the council to spend more time with us understanding further the issues that we've outlined to them, and also, even more generally, come out to the site and see firsthand where this project is and the impacts that it will have on the community.
So that's Timor farmer Chris Eagles there, kind of reacting to that decision by council to enter into a voluntary planning agreement regarding the Hills of Gold wind farm project. Lara.
Another issue that council discussed was the Hunter Gas Pipeline. What was covered there?
Yeah, that's right. So the Hunter Gas Pipeline, it's quite a big project that's going to originate in Queensland and connect to a gas-fired power station in Kurri Kurri here in the Upper Hunter. So at the moment, the map of the project shows that it will actually need to cut through the outskirts of some of the small towns in our regions, kind of like towns like Murrurundi and Scone. And those towns are, as we know, surrounded by farms, but also things like horse studs in our area. There's quite significant horse studs as well. So last night, council moved to support the pipeline as long as it goes on public land rather than any private land. And it was quite a contentious vote there. It wasn't a unanimous vote of support. So the Deputy Mayor, Kiwa Fisher, he said that the conduct of the company has been disingenuous and they haven't respected basically the community feedback that they have received. So they did actually a survey of community members that would be affected by this, and 94% of those opposed. Now, another councillor, Councillor Burns, said that gas is a transition fuel and things like these projects shouldn't be opposed just yet. But in the end, the council did actually vote to support that as long as it is put onto public land. So we'll see how this goes. It is quite a contentious topic in the community and quite a very significant energy project, especially with the shut of Liddell Power Station, that coal-fired power station, in the next coming years.
Bridget Murphy there. If you're listening in the Hunter, you will hear more on those matters tomorrow morning on your local rural report. But if you've got any thoughts on either the pipeline or the wind farm or even projects like that in your own part of the world, send me a text. I'd love to hear your thoughts at 0467 922 684.
The New South Wales Country Hour on ABC Radio New South Wales.
Well, we'll turn now to the unfolding COVID situation, and sale yards across the state are responding to the tightening restrictions. Now, currently, admission preference is given to essential staff, accredited livestock agents and genuine buyers. Kate McGilvray is from the Australian Livestock Markets Association. She says vendors need to call their local agents before heading out to sale yards.
So nationally, sale yards sit at what's called Stage 2 of the National Sale Yard COVID protocol. This is the current position that's endorsed by the red meat industry. And what that means is that first preference admission is given to essential sale yard staff, essential agency staff and accredited agents, genuine buyers with a true intent to purchase, livestock transporters with access to unloading and loading ramps, vendors with livestock in the yarding, but only after first preference admission of those essential people, and then only if allowable within social distancing requirements. And I guess the major restriction at the moment is no public are permitted to attend sale yards. So I guess part of that, it extends to what people are actually doing on the ground. And so sale yards will have specific on-ground systems and protocols in place to manage attendance at sales, but each sale yard facility is quite different from the next. So sale yards may have additional requirements in place to manage their unique facilities.
So what are some of the basic on-the-ground requirements that vendors who are able to attend can expect?
So sale yards obviously have COVID sign-ins in place, restriction on the types of attendees, but then you might also be looking at mandatory masks as a condition of attendance, and also you might be looking at a different format of the sale or the pre-sale activity. So you might look at staggering times for inspection of sale pens if that's something that goes on. So look, the main condition, I guess, at the moment is the masks, the social distancing. But as I said, because all sale yard facilities are quite different, there will be different requirements at each facility.
So perhaps then best for a vendor considering going to their local sale yards to make contact with an agent and check out what's going on first.
Oh, absolutely. Look, the key message is that it is actually really, really important that prior to attending that everybody checks with their local sale yard or agent to find out what those local conditions are and any requirements. And if you do attend, that ensure you're practicing safe social distancing and complying with any of those requested on-site conditions.
How disruptive, Kate, you've dealt with this every outbreak now, these kind of changes as we all have. How disruptive is it to the sale yard and its processes? And not to mention buying and selling, I imagine.
Yeah, look, I guess we're pretty practiced at it now. So the National Sale Yard COVID protocols were developed more than 12 months ago when we first encountered the COVID situation. And sale yards and I guess all the stakeholders that go to sale yards have actually been complying and managing the situation really, really well. So even though I guess there's a flare-up within the communities at the moment, that it's really sort of business as usual for us because we've had those systems in place. It's not new. It's just, let's look at where we need to be and put in those systems. Going forwards, it's like everybody else. We're monitoring the situation and assessing where access conditions should sit according to those protocols. And look, we really do look forward to when we get back to pre-COVID access conditions. Sale yards have historically formed an integral part and the social fabric of rural communities, so they're really, really important places.
Kate McGilvray from the Australian Livestock Markets Association speaking there. A reminder to call your local agent before you head out to the sale yards and, of course, be wearing a mask too. Now, we will stay with COVID for a little bit longer, and the Sydney lockdown has essentially shut down the restaurant trade for many regional suppliers. Greg Cassander supplies the Sydney restaurant and markets trade with organic vegetables from his farms near Orange and the Hawkesbury. He told Hugh Hogan it's been a tough year recovering from the floods, but he should be able to redirect the produce meant for Sydney restaurants.
Look, we grow a big range of vegetables, so sweet corn in summer, pumpkins, watermelons, capsicums, chilies, zucchinis, through to broccoli, cauliflower, lettuce at the moment.
And tell me, what effects has the Sydney lockdown had on your business?
We also do the Carriage Works market, which is right in at Everleigh near Redfern there. So last week it was on and it went okay. I'm not too sure what's happening this week, but the biggest hit for us has probably been the restaurant business that we deal with. Just so that we've basically lost all of that straight away. So, because on top of all of that, we also have an online business that delivers into Sydney to customers direct. So, because of the logistics required for that, we've started picking up restaurants which have just dropped off. But look, I'm talking to those guys all the time. We also do a bit with the convention centre in Sydney. Talking to the exec chef there yesterday, and they're sort of checking up on us, how we're going, and I'm ringing a few guys to see how they're going as well. So it works both ways. And look, hopefully it's not too long. My honest belief is that it's going to be a bit more than 2 weeks. But it's a good time for this to happen to us because it is a little bit slower as far as picking and harvesting and then even a bit of the marketing. And we're down on crop because we're affected by the floods back late March, early April.
So a tough couple of months.
It's been a tough couple of years actually. So I'm hoping for a nice, warm, dry spring, summer.
So you're pretty confident you'll be able to find a home for that produce that would have been going to Sydney restaurants?
Yeah, look, we're right there. We're fortunate. We also do a little bit with Oz Harvest, so nothing's going to be wasted. If we've got to give it to those guys, I know they've got a home and a use for it. So that they help us out there. They get a bit of other stuff off us as well. So you can always find a home for produce. We're not going to have waste. We're not that big. So, we sort of grow for the markets that we know that we've got to supply. So to have the restaurants drop off, that then means we're going to pick up a little bit online. And then I think the market will be okay as well, the Carriage Works market. Whereas in the first lockdown, the Carriage Works market was shut for about 4 months, I think. So, yeah, so we should be right with that. And on top of that, we do supply an organic wholesaler. So and I know that their business has picked up with the lockdown. So it's, look, it's not a great situation, but we should be okay, and I'm not too concerned at the moment.
And there's a bit of a shortage in general of vegetables, is that correct?
Yeah, well, with that big rain event that created the flood in the end of March, that rain event basically came from southeast Queensland all the way down to Victoria. And then Victoria got hit with one 2 or 3 weeks ago as well, I think. So, yeah, look, a wet winter isn't ideal for growing produce like we do. We prefer it to be dry.
Greg Cassander, an organic vegetable grower with farms in the Central Tablelands and the Hawkesbury, speaking to Hugh Hogan there about the impacts of COVID and the Sydney lockdown. Let me know your thoughts. How's it impacting you at the moment at your place or your produce, your cellar door? Do you have any thoughts? Send me a text on 0467 922 684.
You're listening to the New South Wales Country Hour on ABC Radio New South Wales.
Well, it's the mining industry's worst nightmare. Yesterday, a Sunshine Coast miner was told she had the incredibly infectious Delta strain of COVID after returning from a gold mine in the Northern Territory desert. But for an industry that relies on so much of its workforce being fly in, fly out, why have miners not been prioritised for vaccination? Eric Barker asked that question of Queensland Resources Council CEO Ian Macfarlane.
Well, it's a very salient reminder for the resources sector and for everyone who's trying to manage this pandemic. This is something that Queensland mining companies have worked very hard to prevent in this state, and we've had not only good practice but some good luck in regard to that. And to date, we've had no infections in any of our mine sites in any of the regional areas. But it's why the industry has gone over and above the requirements that the Chief Health Officer in Queensland has asked us to, and why we are super vigilant about making sure that when people get on a plane or enter a mine site, that they have been health checked, temperature tested, and in some cases rapid COVID tested as well.
This mine over in the Northern Territory, what's the chances of, say, a contractor getting the virus and bringing it to another mine in Queensland?
Well, probably very low, on the basis that when anyone travels to a mine site, their travel records they have to explain where they've been. That's part of the health check. They need to make sure that they're not displaying symptoms. But the thing that would prevent this in this particular instance is that a contractor would have to declare that they've been at that site. So it is something that's done on an absolutely regular basis. So anyone entering a mine site has to fill out a health check. At that point, that person would have been excluded.
Does this outbreak then change any of those, management techniques that the mining companies have been using?
What it does is it increases the high alert that mining companies have. So everyone is extremely conscious that we are in a very, very difficult period at the moment, and we've seen the Premier react to that this morning. But we do need to be super strict in the way we follow our COVID protocols. The other thing is, of course, encouraging people to get vaccinated. We do need to get our vaccination numbers up, not just in our workforce, but in the communities we work in, as well as, of course, in the general community.
Ian Macfarlane, I do want to talk a bit about the vaccine, with the mining workforce being quite a transient workforce, as you mentioned before, a lot of them flying in and out of the southeast corner. Has the Queensland Resources Council had any discussions about getting mine workers prioritised for the vaccine?
We haven't had discussions in terms of prioritisation of mine workers. We have had discussions in terms of prioritisation of communities where we are working, that is the people who live there. And to a degree that's being done now, and particular areas, of course, are places like Emerald and Moranbah and Biloela and Mara and places like that, Mount Isa, etc. But we've also had discussions with the government about anything the resources industry can do to assist, we will. So we've offered to move vaccines around on our charter flights when we're flying people in and out of regions. We've offered to make facilities available. We've offered to make our health and trained medical staff available if the government were able to offer an accelerated vaccination of a regional community. To date, the government hasn't been able to accept that offer. That's a standing offer. We're continuing to offer any help we can in terms of helping the government roll out this vaccine. But as you know, the complication has been the change in age categories and the shortage of Pfizer vaccines. So it is a difficult process, but I can only repeat the words of the Premier, and that is, if you are able to get a vaccination, please go and get it, not only for your own protection, but for everyone's protection.
Queensland Resources Council CEO Ian Macfarlane speaking to Eric Barker there. Well, it is time to check news headlines with Hayley Craig.
Thank you, Lara. Making news this afternoon, investigations are underway into 2 mystery coronavirus cases in Sydney, with 19 new cases recorded overall in the latest reporting period. The 2 cases under investigation currently live or work in the eastern suburbs. 67,000 tests were carried out in the 24 hours to 8 p.m. last night. Meanwhile, the New South Wales Government has unveiled its support package for businesses across the state, which has been affected by the coronavirus outbreak. It includes grants for small businesses who can prove a loss of income. Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce has been fined $200 by New South Wales Police for failing to wear a mask in breach of public health orders. The ABC understands Mr Joyce was spotted by a member of the public at a petrol station in Armidale and reported for not wearing a mask when he was inside the store. And the high-stakes defamation trial of war veteran Ben Roberts-Smith has been paused for at least a month due to Sydney's COVID-19 lockdown. Justice Anthony Besenko today adjourned the case for mention in 3 weeks, with a view to the trial starting again 1 week later. It comes after the federal court heard 3 weeks of evidence in the case. More news in half an hour, Lara, but how about that? Even the Deputy Prime Minister is being pulled up by police.
Yes, a very good reminder, I think, to all be wearing our masks.
Yes, certainly a serious issue, and just, I guess, jumping out of the car to fill up with petrol and not bringing that mask with you can
just
cost you.
Just slipping your mind, but don't let it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Our lives are busy, but there's people, watching what we're doing at all times in this case.
Yeah, maybe as they should be. Thanks, Hayley Craig.
Thanks, Lara.
Hayley Craig joining us there for news headlines. Well, it's now time to take a look at the weather, and we've got David Wilkie from the Bureau of Meteorology. G'day, David.
G'day, Lara. How are you?
Good. What's happening with the weather today?
Well, we're currently seeing the influence of a high-pressure system, which is off southeast coast. So that's a directing onshore flow about central and northern parts of the coast. So some shower conditions for central and northern parts and a bit of cloud kind of emanating inland, but generally pretty clear over the west and generally fairly dry out there. So, yeah, been a reasonably cloudy morning for the northeast and central parts. We had some reasonably cool temperatures as well recorded this morning, so we got down to about -5 at Armidale in the north, and the areas around northern tablelands and Coomera also got down to -5, so pretty chilly start for many places, but we're starting to see those temperatures rise a little bit.
Now, what about rainfall? Are we expecting anything later in the week? I know yesterday it had been mentioned there might be a little bit of rain. What are we seeing?
Yeah, so we have another front which is expected to pass over the state in the latter part of the week, but ahead of that a trough is going to deepen and bring some showers and possibly some thunderstorms to western parts from tomorrow. So we'll start to see some scattered showers and probably not too many storms if we see any, but more likely a few showers in the west of the state tomorrow. Then becoming a bit more widespread over the western slopes and about parts of the north of the state on Thursday. And on Friday and Saturday, as this front sort of sweeps across, we'll probably see continuation of rain and showers about the ranges. So I think at this stage, the bulk of the rain looks to fall between about Thursday and Saturday, and probably the area that looks to get the best amount of rain would be around about the northwest slopes and plains, so areas like Moree, Narrabri, Coonabarabra and that kind of region, but also up into the northern tablelands around Glen Innes. There's some areas through that region that might see in the range of 50 to 100 millimetres in 3 days, so it could be a reasonable amount of rain for those areas Thursday to Saturday. But I think in general, that sort of area will see about 15 to 30 millimetres as a fairly good bet. Broadly for the rest of the state, for the remainder of the inland at least, about 5 to 15 millimetres I think is on the cards. It's a reasonable system coming through, and we have a few days where we're expecting to get some showers. So yeah, it looks like a reasonable front pushing through. And as it starts to bring the colder air in from the south, we'll get some cooler temperatures developing on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
David Wilkie, anything else to mention before I let you go?
Well, we've currently got a couple of warnings. We have a hazardous surf warning, so if anyone's planning to take a dip in the water or go out on a boat, I'm not sure how likely that is given the weather and also given restrictions, but we do have hazardous surf warning for sort of southern and central parts of the coast, and that's going to extend up through much of the coast on Wednesday and Thursday.
Perfect. David Wilkie, thanks for giving us an update on the weather.
Thank you.
David Wilkie from the Bureau of Meteorology, speaking there about that rain that could be on the way. And speaking of rain, with so much winter rainfall, many of you might be looking at pretty tidy crops when harvest time comes around. But what happens if there's not enough skilled labour to get the crop off later in the year? Well, Dale Bartlett runs 7 harvesters across the eastern seaboard and says he's never had more trouble lining up workers for the upcoming harvest. He told Hugh Hogan the government should start looking at a scheme to allow more skilled workers into the country with the potential of another large crop.
So me and my brother are partners in a farming business and harvest contracting business, Harvest Southern Queensland to the Western District in Victoria, also New South Wales and into the Mallee of Victoria, and then we run 7 harvesters doing that.
So you've got 7 harvesters running up and down the East Coast. How many workers would you usually need in a season?
Varies seasons depending on how big the season is, but this year we're looking at probably 12 to 14 at the peak.
And how are you going attracting those workers this time around?
This season's been really poor inquiries looking for staff this harvest. We've probably spent the most of our money and advertised all areas in Australia, and it's been a very, very poor response.
Where do you usually get your workers from?
Probably 60 to 70% of our workers come from the UK. So the free trade is going to make that probably easy in the future, but this harvest, there's a massive shortage of ag workers in Australia. Like, there's a lot of foreign backpackers that probably their visas are running out and they're going home, and there's a massive shortfall in people experienced in ag.
And I suppose we heard a lot about this with the fruit picking and stuff, but you can't exactly pluck someone out of Sydney and put them in driving $1 million header, can you?
No, like the fruit picking industry is, I suppose, a completely different sort of staff that you need to be able to help you. Like, we need experienced people that know how to operate expensive machinery. Like, it's just you just can't put someone there that hasn't got a background in of operating a machine. Like, there's a lot to know. Like, it's a bit like getting someone from a city that's with a car license and put them in a truck and tell them to go and drive a truck. Like, they got to be trained up and have time spent with them.
So how concerned are you with the, I suppose, harvest is rapidly approaching?
Yeah, well, it's if we could get UK workers into Australia this season would be the easiest way, and I would be a lot more confident in having a very confident work team to go into harvest, and I'd be able to do a better job harvesting for my clients, and I know my equipment's going to get looked after and be ran better, and I don't have to spend as much time and be as stressed of people driving my machines.
So you'd like to see some sort of government scheme like they have for fruit pickers, coming in, quarantine them at home or here, something like that to help out contractors, harvesters?
That would be a perfect idea if we could get something to work for this season, but it takes time for the government to be able to tick the right boxes, and I think time is ticking, and it could be too late if it's not acted on right now.
What are you hearing from other contractors? Are they experiencing similar shortages in workers?
Some contractors I've been talking to, and they're thinking about maybe even possibly selling a machine because they know they're not going to be able to get a good quality staff to be able to run harvest this year. So it might be just easier with the shortage of machinery to just sell the machine. You can probably make a little bit more money that way because there's a big shortage in them, and just run less machines.
Predicted another above-average crop. Pretty worrying then if you can't get contractors to take that crop off.
I think it hasn't come to a head yet. There's potential of West Coast they're wet. It's been an unreal start on the eastern seaboard. There is huge potential to have a massive harvest this season, and there's going to be a massive shortage.
It's Al Bartlett sharing his thoughts on the worker shortage. He's a farmer and harvest contractor who works across Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. What about you? Are you having any shortages yourself? Have you got any experiences to share? I certainly in my travels are hearing them, that's for sure. 0467 922 684. And speaking of the text line, we've got a couple of texts opposing the wind farm development Hills of Gold. Sue Abbott from Scone Green sent us a message saying, I moved the motion last night that Upper Hunter Shire Council opposed the Hunter gas pipeline because gas pipelines are known to leak to cause soil erosion to contaminate water. I also said that the Australian gas industry operates as a cartel and that the ACCC has repeatedly raised concerns about the conduct of the East Coast gas market. Thanks for your thoughts, Sue. Richard also texted in to question why wind towers need to be in regional areas at all. He says the best place for them is on the coast or out to sea. They're an old technology and will leave a terrible legacy, and councils will end up being responsible for removing them. Thanks for your thoughts as well, Richard.
The New South Wales Country Hour on ABC Radio New South Wales.
Well, the latest land clearing report data shows a huge spike in land clearing across New South Wales, with 75% of tree clearing deemed unexplained. Now, the new data is collected from satellite imagery and comes as Deputy Premier John Barilaro seeks to deliver on an agreement with Liberal ministers to settle the so-called koala wars. Independent New South Wales MP Justin Field has slammed the New South Wales Liberal National Government and told Lucy Thackeray they've been failing to protect the environment since their land clearing reforms came into effect in 2017.
Well, this is satellite data that's assessed every year, and what we've seen is nearly 55,000 hectares of woody vegetation, forest, woodland areas, almost 200 times the size of the Sydney CBD, which has been cleared across New South Wales. Shockingly, 3/4 of that is described as unexplained. We just don't know the justification for that type of clearing, and the concern is that some of it could be unlawful. So there's real questions to answer here by the government about their land management reforms and the extent of the habitat loss and decline in biodiversity that it's causing.
What period of time is this looking at, and how does that correlate with what the environment was doing? Because we know obviously we're in drought until the beginning of 2020, and that's when we started to see rain begin across New South Wales.
Well, this satellite imagery was assessed over the 2019-2020 period, so it covers both the drought, end of the drought period, but also the bushfire period. And bushfire impacted forests are specifically excluded from this data. So this is really land clearing and vegetation loss that's not related to the fires, and it also occurred at the end of the drought. So there's some really shocking statistics here, given there was not a lot of incentive at the time to be clearing vegetation. So I think it's really time to draw a red line here. This level of clearing was not envisaged when the government introduced these laws. It's now 3 years in a row we've seen near record levels of clearing. An urgent review is needed, and I think we need a moratorium on certain types of clearing until we can ensure the protections for threatened species, vulnerable species and habitat are actually working in New South Wales.
Is it reasonable to think that a considerable portion of this clearing could have been a result of the drought and, you know, the death of so many trees and you know, complete dehydration of those landscapes?
Look, the drought could have had an impact in certain areas, but it would be, I think, inconceivable to a degree that level of clearing would be caused by the drought. There's some real standout local government areas, such as Dubbo, where clearing of woody vegetation for agriculture is 5 times higher than the historical average over that period. I mean, there's just a lot of questions here, and the unexplained levels of clearing, I think, raise particular concerns. It's also really important that this be considered in the context of this ongoing koala war between between the Liberal and National parties in New South Wales. The government has said on one hand that it wants to double koala populations, but on the other hand, John Barilaro and the National Party are seeking a review of the Land Clearing Code and the Private Forestry Code and want to make it more flexible for farmers in particular to clear land. You can't do both. Koalas need trees ultimately, and if we don't stem the loss of koala habitat, we will see this species fall into extinction in New South Wales.
Independent New South Wales MP Justin Field speaking there to Lucy Thackeray. Now, he slammed the New South Wales Liberal National Government and told, as he was speaking there to Lucy Thackeray, that they've been failing to protect the environment since their land clearing reforms came into effect in 2017. I'm not sure if you've got any thoughts on that, but you can send me a text on 0467 922 684. I've got another text here. It's from Tim from Sutherland. It's on that worker shortage we spoke about a little bit earlier. He says, I have had to take leave without pay from work. Is it possible for keen people from the city to be trained to use headers or other cropping machinery? Happy to go bush for a while. Well, I can't answer for anyone, but I think if you put a call out to some farmers or an ad even up on Facebook, I think you'd get a pretty good response, Tim. Well, now we've got our next story, and it is, of course, another one of concern because while many community members are relieved controversial poison bromadiolone was rejected as a tool to fight the mouse plague, not everyone sees the decision as good news. Now, last week, if you cast your mind back, the Independent Agricultural Chemicals Regulator, the APVMA, rejected an urgent application to approve the poison for agricultural use. Now, this was due to concerns about its high secondary killing rate and the risks for other animals. But frustrated Coonabarabran resident Susan Sovic tells Lucy Thackeray something must be done to help struggling farmers.
I just think that people are fed up with the mice, I think, because of the way that the mice have gone through crops, have gone through and destroyed farmers' lives more than anything else. Nobody wants to see that sort of thing where it's introduced and possibly go into the food chain for animals, for humans. Nobody wants to see that. But nobody has come up with a better idea to get rid of this plague, which is just rampant throughout central New South Wales. And into Queensland, and I don't know about heading into Victoria, but what else do you do? If you don't kill them, then they're just going to breed and breed and breed, and it's going to continue until they wipe themselves out. When and if that ever happens, I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. I don't think there's a cure for the problem. I don't know what else other than introducing some kind of heavy dose poison to be used accordingly, to be rationed out to farmers and not available, say, to people in the towns, the farmers. If they do want to use it, then I'm sure that they understand the ramifications of it. But where do you draw the line between the farmers' livelihoods, which is going to affect us anyway in prices after all the crops are destroyed? The prices of grain for bread and all that sort of thing is just going to go through the roof. So where do you draw the line? You use it and take the chance that the secondary poisoning is going to be as devastating as they say, or do all the farmers just walk off the land and leave their properties and go, no, I've had enough. I can't put up this anymore. We've gone through all this drought. They've lost everything during the drought. They've had to sell off all their livestock, haven't been able to plant their crops, and now we have the mice come through. I have heard of people that are extremely fed up. They feel like it's never going to end. I had a friend who was crying because her kids were bitten, because the mice had chewed through everything that they've got. And it got to the point where they were all sleeping in one room, tried to mouse-proof a room, so that her and the kids and her hubby could all sleep comfortably at night time and get up in the morning and see what the mice had done. The mice are still there most of the time in the daytime anyway. It's not like they run away and only come out at night time. There are a lot that are still out in the daytime. And I think farmers and people like my friend, their mental health would have to be suffering in some way, shape or form to just see the devastation that it's caused on their own properties.
What does it do to you when you see these people very excited about bromadiolone being rejected? I believe you've got some strong opinions about people that are very, very happy about that decision.
I can understand that they're happy in some respects. I'm sure that there are people out there who aren't happy about it because I don't know every farmer in the world. I don't know every farmer in Australia. I don't know what their opinions are. But I do know that there are a lot of people in the cities, as far as I'm concerned, I call them keyboard warriors because they sit there and they say, yay, 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 all the fluffy little animals are not going to die, which is wonderful that they're not. Don't get me wrong. I don't like the idea as much as the next person, but the opinions that I've heard I think are just absolutely ridiculous. But something more has to be done. And the people in the cities, I don't believe, really have a clue as to what's going on. And I think that it's a shame that they couldn't get in their cars and come out and drive to any one of these areas, Coonabarabran, Tamworth, Dubbo, any of the areas, and take a look for themselves at the destruction that's been caused and speak to the locals and ask them how they've dealt with it over the last few months. I just don't know. It's the people in the cities that are running things, and I believe that us out here in the bush sometimes we're just forgotten.
Coonabarabran's Susan Sovic speaking to Lucy Thackeray there about the fact that she's a little disappointed to see bromadiolone was rejected as a tool to fight the mouse plague. So not everyone sees the decision as good news. Of course, we did see plenty of people celebrating the decision, you might say, especially in terms of wildlife. We've certainly heard plenty of thoughts on that one. Now, we've got a few more texts in. This one from Keith. This is on the land clearing that we just heard about. Give me a break. Mismanaged forests burned to extinction levels have done more damage than farmers ever have. Townie conservation experts. Those are the thoughts of Keith. And Brad, he says unexplained land clearing needs massive fines or seizure of property to deter the cowboys from wrecking the state. So a few thoughts there. That's just on that tree clearing that we heard about a little bit earlier. A new report showing a huge spike in land clearing across New South Wales, with 75% of tree clearing deemed unexplained. We're hoping to have reaction, I should say, from New South Wales farmers on Rural Reports in the morning. But right now, it is time for markets. And we'll go first to Wodonga Cattle with Leanne Dax.
Good afternoon. Numbers dropped to a small yarding of only 450 cattle. Quality was very mixed with quite a number of manufacturing cattle on offer. Trade cattle were in short supply. However, there were some excellent grain-assisted steers and heifers in the offering. Most of the usual winter buyers attended. However, there were two away. The pick of the veal, $4.76 to $5.30. Trade heifers improved 13 cents, $4.20 to $5.18. Trade steers were back 20, $4.30 to $5.04 on account of quality. Feeder steers were down 7, $4.20 to $4.85. Feeder heifers were very few, back 9, $4.10 to $4.31. Heavy steers slipped 39 cents, quality related, $3.70 to $4.20. Bullocks were back 15, $3.65 to $4.25. Friesian steers made up a fair portion of the offering, selling at $3.08 to $3.20. I'm Leanne Dax for MLA.
Forbes Sheep and Lambs now with Graham Richard.
Good afternoon. The lamb numbers lifted by 2,000 for 24,500. The quality remains good with plenty of heavy and extra heavy lambs. Trade weights were in reasonable numbers and only a limited supply of lightweights. The market sold to a dearer trend. The new season trades 207 to 225. Two score old processing lambs 140 to 168. The old trades to 24 kilos were 11 to 14 dearer 185 to 230 to average 880 cents. The 24 to 26 200 to 230 or 850 cents on average. 26 to 30 kilo lambs lifted 9, 217 to 244 or 790 to 800 cents. The 30 kilos and heavier 236 to 282 or 745 cents on average. Merino trades were up $15 to $20, 177 to 198. The heavyweights 183 to 230 or 750 to 780 cents on average. The best hogget reached 236. The balance of the lambs and 3,400 sheep are still to be sold. And this has been Graham Richard at Forbes.
Carcore Cattle now with David Monk.
Good afternoon. Numbers were backed by 320 for a yarding of 1,020. It was another good quality yarding with a pretty good selection of young cattle to suit the feeders and processors, along with some more finished ground steers and heifers. There were around 175 cows penned, which were mostly prime heavyweights. Young cattle of the trade were around firm, with the prime vealers selling to 537. Prime yearlings sold from 380 to 506. Feeder cattle were 10 to 12 cents cheaper, with the feeder steers selling from 424 to 505, while the feeder heifers sold from 399 to 480. Weaners to the restockers continue to sell well, with the young steers selling to $5.66 and the young heifers $5.28. Grant steers and heifers were 10 to 14 cents cheaper, with quality a factor. The prime ground steers sold from $3.50 to $4.27, while the prime ground heifers sold from $3.50 to $4.15. Cows were 3 cents dearer, with the 2 and 3 scores selling from $2.40 to $3.15, while the prime heavyweight cows sold from $300 to $3.54 to average $3.30. Heavy bulls were a little dearer, selling to $3.15. This is David Monk at CTLX.
And now to Gunnedah cattle with James Armitage.
Good afternoon. Numbers were down to 500 head, most categories represented with quality and condition fair to good. The same buyers were in attendance. Varying trends with vealers to restockers firmed to slightly cheaper. The steers over 200 kilos, $5.36 to 550 cents, with heifers at 528 cents a kilo. Trade vealers sold from $4.78 to 4.88 cents. Medium and heavyweight feeder steers were firmed to cheaper. Medium weights most affected. They sold from $4.68 to 4.75 cents. Those to restockers were dearer, selling from $4.92 to 5.22 cents a kilo. Heavyweights saw little change, $4.38 to 500 cents. Yearling heifers sold a slightly cheaper, trends quality contributing. Medium weights $4.18 to 4.76. Heavy ground steers to process a little cheaper. Again, quality was a factor, ranging from $3.47 to 3.97 cents. There was little change in the cow market, demand remaining high. Heavy C muscles $3.23 to 3.29. The D muscle 3 and 4 scores $2.97 to 322 cents a kilo. James Armitage for MLA in Gunnedah.
Thanks, James. And now to Inverell cattle with Stephen Adams.
Good afternoon. Inverell numbers reduced by half to 401 head for the 29th of June. With yearlings providing the bulk, not all exporters present, but operating in a stronger cow market. Restockers providing strong competition for weaner cattle, some feeder lines selling to cheaper trends. Weaner steers were significantly dearer, $5.80 to $6.38. Heifers similar, $5.14 to $5.76. Light and medium yearling steers to feed sold to a cheaper trend. Light steers to background to $5.30. Heavy steers to feed slightly dearer, $4.28 to $4.73. Similarly, light heifers to feed were cheaper, $3.44 to $4.36. Conversely, the heavy drafts sold to a dearer trend, $3.77 to $4.53. Background heifers to $4.78. No change in the ground steers, $3.32 to $3.47. Heifers $3.28 to $3.78. Cows sold to a dearer trend, medium weights $2.74 to $3.10. The heavy drafts 12 cents better, $300 to $3.20. Heavy bulls $2.80 to $2.91, and bulls to feed on $2.80 to $3.39. Stephen Adams, MLA at Inverell.
And finally to Scone cattle with Neil Geddes.
Afternoon, numbers lifted for 636, mainly young vealer steers and heifers, well-finished trade cattle limited in supply, around 45 cows penned. Demand very strong throughout. Over 200 kilogram vealer steers to the restockers, 18 cents dearer, 4.68 to 6.60 cents. Heavy pens firm, 500 to 5.64 cents a kilogram. Vealer heifers also to the restockers, strong gains, 4.92 to 6.30 cents. The medium weights, lighter end reach, 6.21 cents a kilogram. Medium weight yearling steers to feed, 14 cents dearer, 4.40 to 5.18 cents. Same weight heifer portion to feed firm, 3.90 to 4.96 cents. Lighter weights reached 5.06 cents. The best vealers to the butchers reached 5.10 cents a kilogram. Heavyweight ground steers to the processors, 3.04 to 3.24 cents, up to 4.20 cents to the restockers. Heifers to the processors, 3.05 to 4.42 cents. Cows little change, only quality related. Medium weights 3.02 to 3.18 cents, and better finished heavyweights 2.94 to 3.26 cents a kilogram. Neil Geddes, Scone Cattle for the MLA.
Thanks, Neil. That's our market wrap for today. Look, before I let you go, it is nearly time for the news headlines. I've got a couple of other texts in. This time on Barnaby Joyce, of course, he did receive a fine today for not wearing a mask. He just ducked out to pay for some fuel. Now, Viv says Barnaby Joyce should be made an example of and given a $2,000 fine, not just $200, as that would mean nothing to him. And we have a text with no name about the land clearing issue. They say the data, RE land clearing, needs to be independently verified. So a few thoughts there. Thank you to all of you for sharing your thoughts. Now, before I let you go, we've had a little bit of heavy stuff today, some pretty serious content, but I did want to let you know some good news. Jersey, Australia has elected a new president, and for the first time in its predecessors' bodies that date back to the 1890s, they're a woman. Lisa Broad. She's from Victoria's Gippsland region and joins the Jersey Australia board. She says she wants Jersey cows to become Australia's top breed. So a very well done to her. Not to be biased, but go girl power. And I hope that you all have a cracking afternoon. That is my lot for today. Back tomorrow, but it's news time. It's 1 o'clock.